Hi everyone, welcome to Module 4. Can you believe that we are almost halfway there? You are all doing fantastic work. Keep it up. If anyone is having trouble getting their hands wrapped around the research project, please feel free to contact me via phone or email. This week's lecture is dealing with the basics of experimentation. We will examine the basic concepts of independent and dependent variables. If you go on in psychology, you will see these terms again and again, so get comfortable with them. They are important to understanding research design and the basics of experimentation. Another important aspect of research design is who are you going to study? This is determined by a number of factors, such as what is the nature of the problem, who do you have access to as a researcher, and how much time and money do you have? Lastly, we will take a look at the impact of culture the researcher and subjects can have on a study. Literally, there are wings in libraries that cover these topics. Well, okay, I'm exaggerating a little, and we are just trying to expose you to some important concepts in research design. One of the important concepts in research design is the concept of a variable. A variable is a behavior or event that can assume different values. Independent variables are the ones that the researcher manipulates. For example, independent variables can be temperature in a room, or taking medication. Age, gender, ethnicity, and other personal characteristics can also be treated as independent variables, even though the researcher doesn't manipulate these. The dependent variable is the variable that the researcher is measuring. For example, the researcher might be learning in different room temperatures. For example, the subject might be learning at different room temperatures, and the percent correct on the test is the dependent variable. Or the doctor might be examining the reduction of symptoms for some medications, so physiological variables are the dependent variables in our medication study. Extraneous forces can mess with research study or design and affect or influence the relationship of the independent variable and the dependent variable. For example, it might just be chance that a medicine worked. If a medicine worked on 5 subjects, would you give it to your child? How about if it was effective on 5,000 or 10,000 children? Would that be okay? The element of chance has been removed more so in larger samples. There are different techniques that researchers can use to eliminate these nuisance variables, such as randomization and counterbalancing. Counterbalancing is a technique to examine the order effects. So if you wanted to see if the order of how things were presented influenced the outcome of performance or behavior, you could mix up the order. When a researcher is looking at a problem and decides to study to run, the next thing that he or she will examine is who the participants of the study will be. Who is in the study is typically determined by the nature of the problem, availability of the subjects, and time and money. The nature of the problem is easy. If your study involves preschoolers, well, you need to study preschool children. If you studying the effects of positive visualization prior to an exam in college, well, then you need college kids. If you are studying the effects of concussions and mild head trauma in college football players, well, you get the idea. Who is in your study is also determined by who you have available. Many professors in college study the mind and brain, have college students available to them, so many studies have college students for subject. Limiting yourself to a convenience sample can affect if your study will generalize to the overall population. Do these techniques work with preschoolers, middle school, high school, or other adults and geriatric populations? It's something to be considered if you're just using college students. Financing and time will also impact on the number of subjects utilized in a study. Researchers also, prior to running a study, calculate a statistic called power. This statistic tells the researcher how many subjects that should be used in each group they are running. For example, the control group and the experimental group. The researcher can have a profound effect on a research study. Simply because the researcher is motivated and wants to see a study succeed, and people are nice and want to help him or her out, this may skew the results. One of the things the researcher uses is a double-blind procedure. It is called double-blind since both the subjects and the experimenter don't know who is in the group and what they are getting. So in a medication study, where the researcher wants to see has medicine done well, the subjects and the researcher have no idea which subject is getting a sugar pill and which subject is getting the real medication. Next, Can one's culture influence results of a research study? Can different cultures have different outcomes on the same research project? Generally, culture influences things like attitudes and preferences, but not things like perception of pain or the subject or the sight of an object. More physiological measures are less influenced by culture than personality and interpersonal relationships, and meaning, which are more influenced by one's culture. The old nature versus nurture argument, genetic influence versus the environment. Well, that's a brief overview of some of the basics of experimentation, independent variables and dependent variables, some of the things that can skew your results, and some of the things that researchers can do to lessen the impact that they have on an experiment. Have a great week 4. Good luck on the midterm. And as always, we'll see you around campus. Take care.